Welcome to For You Radio, where the gospel's for the believer and the unbeliever alike. I'm Craig D'Onofrio, pastor of St. James Lutheran Church in the Old Brooklyn neighborhood of Cleveland, Ohio. And you, sir?
Just distracted by your little sing-songy quality there. It's lovely.
Thank you.
I am Troy Neer, pastor of St. Peter's Lutheran Church, Shaker Heights, Ohio.
That's true.
Right, thank you. Forgot.
You have passed this test so far. You're doing well. We are a ministry of both churches, St. James in Old Brooklyn on Broadview Avenue and St. Peter's over in Shaker Heights off Van Aken. Is that
Van
right?
Aken.
Van Aken.
And Glencairn and Ingleside. And
yeah, we'd love to have you come worship with
Winslow.
us. Come visit.
yeah.
Come see us. We want to see you. Also, we're very happy to be part of the podcast network, broadcast network of 1517.org. Go check them out. 1517.org. Books galore, classes, courses from the academy, all sorts of good stuff. 1517.org. Check it out. That is your command for today.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're done with gospel now. Now we're just issuing commands.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
it. We're in a weird mood today. We've eaten Mexican food, and it has left us groggy.
Yes.
Troy, if people wanted to email us and or just find us on the internet, what would they do?
That was a bad transition, my friend.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Internet. Right. Web browsers. You got those, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. All you people listening probably have a web browser at some point, maybe in your pocket. Point your web browser towards www.foryouradio.org.
There you go.
Okay. Email us at foryouradio@1517.org.
That is correct. Well done.
Thank you.
You are batting 1,000 for the day so far. We are looking at a few different things today. Right now, I've got Facebook open on my page here, which is not supposed to be there.
No.
We're looking at Exodus 17 and 1 Corinthians 10. Do you realize I am in my 30th year of broadcasting?
Are you now?
I'm just about to hit number 30 in broadcasting.
Excellent.
And
What a long
I still
storied
am a
history.
complete amateur.
Well, thanks, folks. That's all for today.
Yeah, we'll see you later. Anyway, Exodus 17. Now, we're talking about miracles in the Old Testament, and Troy really likes this one, where we get water from a rock. And you
well-
pushed hard for this, and I've protested. I've dragged my
It's
feet.
not the way it was at all.
That's true.
Okay.
So anyway, Troy, tell us the story of Exodus 17 and what's going on here.
The whole story?
Well, just around Exodus 17.
Well, you know what? Let's start with the obvious answer, right? This is the book of Exodus, and it is speaking of the Exodus.
The exit.
Yes, the leaving from Egypt. So when ancient Israel, and you get your 10 plagues story and all that, and of course the parting of the Red
Let
Sea.
my people go.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So all of that, right? And really, the whole thing is that the Lord is creating for Himself a people. He's bringing them up into the land that He promised their forefathers to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
Isn't he kind of doing that from like Adam on, creating a people for himself?
Well,
I mean,
yes.
doesn't he? I mean, that's
Yes.
kind of repetitive and redundant.
Yes. But in this particular case, he's, I like the old King James would say, a peculiar people.
Well, that's true.
A
And the
specific and
the church
chosen
is
people.
still a peculiar
a
people.
peculiar people. Yeah. So, and that's what's happening here in Exodus 17. But there's a couple recurring themes in this Exodus wandering. One is the Israelites whine. Yeah.
And that's new. How? Why?
Well, it's just a recurring theme.
It is.
Yes, the whole bit that, we don't have such and such. It was so much better back in Egypt, and why'd you bring us out here to die, and such and so forth.
Once again, this goes back
Yes.
to Adam and Eve, right?
It does.
Adam, what have you done? It was the girl you gave me. You shouldn't have given me the girl, or we wouldn't have done it.
Okay.
Right? I mean,
Yes.
it's pretty much from the
Yes.
beginning.
So the Lord is moving in this gracious way, and yet the people don't have everything they want in the moment they need it. Now, and today's story is a pretty important thing to need and want. They need water.
Yeah, that's true.
And so maybe their grumbling here is perhaps acceptable, but we'll see.
Or at least kind of legitimate, right?
We'll see.
I mean,
Yes.
if you're in the desert and you're thirsty, I don't think that it's unreasonable to say, Moses, you dragged us out here and you didn't remember to bring the sparklets with you. You know, you should have brought some bottled water or something.
Sparklets?
Sparklets bottled water.
I've never seen those. What is that?
Maybe it's a California thing.
Could be.
Arrowhead? Arrowhead water?
Nope. Got nothing. Tap?
Tap water?
Tap water? Yeah, I know
There
that
you
one.
go.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that brand.
Evian? Evian would be good for you. It's, fancy.
Oh, okay.
Like
Thank
you.
you.
So anyway,
Exodus 17.
yeah, where do we start with this?
Well, let's start with verse 1, shall we?
Okay, go for it.
So we'll get up to the miracle, but we're going to ramp it up. So all the congregation of the people of Israel moved on from the wilderness of Sin by stages, according to the commandment of the Lord, and camped at Rephidim, but there was no water for the people to drink. Therefore the people quarreled with Moses and said, "Give us water to drink." And Moses said to them, "Why do you quarrel with me? Why do you test the Lord?" But the people thirsted there for water, and the people grumbled against Moses and said, "Why did you bring us up out of Egypt to kill us and our children and our livestock with thirst?" So Moses cried to the Lord, "What shall I do with this people? They're almost ready to stone me." And the Lord said to Moses, "Pass on before the people, taking with you some of the elders of Israel, and take in your hand the staff with which you struck the Nile, and go. Behold, I will stand before you there on the rock at Horeb, and you shall strike the rock, and the water shall come out of it, and the people will drink." And Moses did so in the sight of elders of Israel, and he called the name of the place Massah and Meribah, because of the quarreling of the people of Israel, and because they tested the Lord by saying, "Is the Lord among us or not?"
Okay. So we have been talking about this, and it's quirky, I guess, that we have these two Hebrew words that aren't translated into English. And why did the translators, why did they leave us with Massah and Meribah?
Right,
When, let's see, Massah is, it means testing, and Meribah means quarreling or bickering or something like that.
Yeah, right.
So why didn't they say the place is called testing and bickering instead of?
I don't know.
When I build my DeLorean time machine, we'll
You'll
find out.
Right?
We'll go find out.
Probably because it's a proper name or a proper noun, and so they left it in the original language. Both of those are Hebrew words, of course, right? Yeah.
So anyway,
But I got to admit,
that's
so
just
yeah,
kind of the, and this happens over and over in the Bible.
it does, right?
You're like, well, why didn't they just translate that into English?
And for that matter, yeah. It's as a kid, I was always confused about a bunch of stuff in the scriptures, and like when the angel told Mary what to name Jesus, right? "And you shall call his name Jesus, for he will save his people from their sin." I'm like,
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Why would that be?
exactly. What is it? What do you mean by that? So, yeah, you got to understand a little Greek, a little Hebrew, and then you pick up on it.
Yeah,
go,
then
this
you
makes
realize
sense.
Yeshua, Jesus,
Yeah,
means
there you
God
go.
saves, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So you're going to name him God Saves.
Yeah,
well, that
right.
makes sense.
That makes sense. Yes. So the miracle that we're looking at, though, is not the naming of the place.
No, that is not. That is
testing
just
and
one of
bickering.
those weird rabbit
Okay.
trails that I indulge in.
Yes, I see that. Yeah, I wish I could pick up when you're about to go down the rabbit trail.
Yeah, there's no, I don't even know. It just happens.
I'm going to go look for the tell next time. But the miracle is the water from the rock, which doesn't happen often, does it?
No, I've never gone out with my Moses staff and hit rocks, but I don't think that that's a common occurrence.
Have you ever hit a rock and seen water come out of it?
No, and I have hit rocks before, but not with my Moses staff.
Okay,
So,
all right.
Yeah.
So this is a miracle, right?
Yes. Yeah,
Now,
absolutely.
So there's all sorts of neat stuff. So on a most basic level, what's happening?
Well, we've got thirsty people in the desert. That's what's happening.
Right?
Right. And of course they start bickering because that's what thirsty people in the desert do, especially when you've led tens of thousands of them out into the wilderness without
So
without the case of Evian.
So it's like hangry, only you're thirsty instead?
Thirsty, hangry, thirsty,
Thangry.
thangry.
They're
I guess.
thangry. Okay. Thank you.
Right.
So,
So there.
and
Well, one of the things that I find interesting here is in verse 3, the people thirsted there for water, and the people grumbled against Moses and said, "Why did you bring us out of Egypt to kill us and our children and our livestock with thirst?" Why is this grumbling instead of a legitimate concern? I don't understand why this is portrayed as an unreasonable gripe that the people have. I mean, this is in my opinion, a legitimate grievance.
okay.
It's like, we're out here, we don't have any water, you're our leader.
Yeah.
Who's your logistics guy? Why didn't you plan for this?
But is he their leader?
Well, he is. God made him to be their
Well,
leader.
hold on. But verse 1, remember that. The congregation of the people of Israel moved on according to the commandment of the Lord. And remember how they moved through this, right? There's that pillar of cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night.
There's that.
And when the cloud, which, by the way, is the presence of the Lord, when that cloud moves, they all pack up according to the prescribed schedule, and they move along. And so,
But God designated Moses as the leader of the people.
yes.
So he is their leader, but he follows God. So
my point is...
when they grumble against Moses, they grumble against God.
Yes,
right?
they do. Right. And the Lord's presence is right there visibly among them. And you only have to go back, just a few chapters to see how the Lord is miraculously providing for them continually. So suddenly they get to this one place where there's no water and they want a grape.
Right.
Rather than say, well, this is interesting. The Lord told us to park here. Certainly he's going to provide for us somehow, right? But instead so rather than reacting in faith, they are being faithless. Are they not?
True.
Yeah.
They are not trusting God to provide.
Provide for their daily sustenance.
Right.
Right? Yes. So now he already is providing for them. He's given them manna by this point, right?
What is it?
Manna?
What is it?
Manna.
What is it? If you don't know, that's what manna means. Is What is it?
Oh, that's another one of those things. They called it manna, right?
Yeah, right.
What? Yeah. Anyway, so the Lord, again, I think at its most basic level, this miracle is an example of the Lord demonstrating his gracious providence for the physical needs of the people.
Okay.
So he will give them water when they need water.
So maybe the quarreling and the bickering is instead of them saying to Moses, we know that the Lord's brought us out here and he's going to provide for us.
Yeah.
We're thirsty. You think you can talk to him about providing for us here because we're thirsty, right? Instead of that, they're like, why did you do this to us? You're
Right.
persecuting us. They become snowflakes and they're out there just whining in the desert, right?
Well, right. There's that question. Why did you bring us up out of Egypt? To kill us?
Right.
No, I brought you out of Egypt to deliver you from slavery and make you my own people. I will be your God. You'll be my people.
And Moses just wants to look at them and say, that's exactly why I brought you out here. You're making me crazy and you need to die, right? I mean, that's
right.
kind of probably what he's feeling.
Well, there is that too. What am I going to do with these people? God, And of course, it all kind of runs downhill. The people gripe on Moses, so Moses gripes on God.
Right. Right.
And the Lord is remarkably patient. Now, here's another great thing, though, too, that he says, hey, go and stand by that rock and strike at it. I am going to stand right next to you. I'll be right there. I don't think visibly, but the Lord is there.
Pass before the people, taking with you some of the elders of Israel, and take in your hand the staff with which you struck the Nile, and go. Behold, I will stand before you there on the rock at Horeb, and you shall strike the rock, and the water shall come out of it, and the people will drink. And Moses did so in the sight of the elders of Israel. Yeah. I didn't notice that. That's a good catch. That the Lord will stand there before you. He will be there before you. before in front of you, right? I
Ooh,
will
good
lead
point.
you.
Yes.
And so when he strikes the rock, it's almost as if the Lord is standing there with the rock, right?
Ooh. Like maybe the Lord is the rock?
Ah,
Okay. So
and that kind of catapults us to
are you, yeah.
to 1 Corinthians 10 there.
So you're kind of peeling back a layer or two of this miracle, huh? Is that what you're doing?
Interesting.
Okay, interesting.
Interesting.
Um,
So before
So-
we fast forward to 1 Corinthians 10, anything else? that
I
you really
do.
wanna-
I do have
yeah.
one more point here. This miracle is tied up then to that final question: is the Lord among us or not? Can we trust in God's presence and His providence? Can we trust in God's love? And the people initially, their answer was no, and God gave them all that anyway.
Yeah. One of the things that I find interesting is that throughout the Old Testament, we find all these what we call Christophanies, where God appears, kind of pre-incarnate Christ manifestations, the angel of the Lord, the burning bush, the pillar of fire by night, and the pillar of cloud by day. You know, all of these physical manifestations of God. And in this case, perhaps even him standing in the rock or in the place of the rock or that sort of thing. And then you fast forward to kind of the post-New Testament times of the church, and a lot of Christians have removed anything physical related to God, and it's just become spiritual. And I'm kind of curious why that is, that we have gone from God manifesting himself in both spiritual and physical ways together to people only expecting God to be present spiritually and not physically as well. And so that's just a thought that I want to put in your heads as you're listening.
Interesting.
Because, you know, when you look at things like baptism and the Lord's Supper and these sorts of things, God has promised to be active in a very special way in these things and even present in these things in a very special way.
Yeah.
And so I contend that he hasn't stopped behaving in this way. Just because we don't have a pillar of fire and a pillar of cloud doesn't mean that God isn't with us spiritually and physically together. Right?
Yeah.
So let's consider that as we look at 1 Corinthians 10 also. Where do we pick up in 10?
1 Corinthians 10.
Um,
Well, how about 10 verse 1?
Okay, we can do that.
Okay, so the history behind this, Paul is talking to the church in Corinth. They too are kind of grumblers, right? Yeah, he's got some problems with the church.
You're
in
not going to
Corinth.
insinuate that even the church today grumbles, are you?
Not mine.
No, of course not yours.
No. People at St. James don't grumble unless they call me up to grumble about you.
Well, yeah, they call me up to grumble too, but
Oh, do they? Okay.
no, we've got nice folks, but still, we all grumble. That's our way. You know, we want to blame God for all the stupid stuff we do.
Oh, I don't often do that. I just grumble because I'm a grumpy old man.
You are.
I am. Grumpy?
Well, it's
I like that.
Kind
yeah.
of got
Anyway,
that
so
troll thing going
the,
there.
the church in Corinth specifically, and by the way, no one from St. James has ever called me to complain.
As far as you know, as far as I know.
No, they never have. Matter of fact, it's usually opposite. Oh, yeah, we love Pastor. Okay, anyway, so chapter 10, Paul is speaking to the problematic church in Corinth, and there are some grumblers there, and he wants to kind of make sure that they know where to locate, where to find, where to focus their faith.
Right.
Okay. 10 verse 1, For I do not want you to be unaware, brothers, that our fathers were all under the cloud, and all passed through the sea, and were all baptized into Moses in the cloud and in the sea. And they all ate the same spiritual food, and they all drank the same spiritual drink, for they drank from the spiritual rock that followed them, and the rock was Christ. Now, interesting.
You don't want to finish with verse 5 there?
Nevertheless, with multitude God was not pleased, for they were overthrown in the wilderness. There you go. Happy.
Okay, yeah.
I was gonna end on the positive note of the Christ rock being with them.
You can do that too.
All right. So first, the fun bits. Can we?
Yes.
Okay, so this rock that follows them, Paul says, there's actually like a rabbinic legend that this rock that Moses hit with his staff and poured forth water, that when the Israelites packed up and moved on, the rock followed them, literally just kind of rolled after them, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, which, great. So do we have to make the Rolling Stone joke now then?
Yes.
Or- okay.
Yes. Clearly Keith Richards was involved there. That's because he
So-
never ages. He is
Never itch.
he is a miracle in and of himself.
So that's this rabbinic legend that the rock literally just kind of the stone rolled after them. I don't know, continuing to provide water or what?
Yeah,
Yes.
I was kind of wondering if it was the water rock that just followed them for the next 40 years or whatever. That all of a sudden, there's your source of water following you around.
Well, later on, when some commentators will actually say that later on when Moses strikes the rock again to get water, there's a whole other story there. But,
this time he was told not to strike the rock, right?
Yeah. But some people will say, oh, that was the same rock. So, yes, they're saying that the rock did follow. But that's just a legend. And I don't think we necessarily need to believe that. But it's fun.
Well, the other thought is they did circle around in the wilderness for a long time.
Yes.
For 40 years.
Okay, good point.
A trip that should have just taken a few weeks took 40 years. And so maybe it was the same rock, but they just circled back.
So
as it
they
were.
followed the rock, as it were, but yeah.
Yeah, they just, this is the same rock that we were at 18 years ago, isn't it?
I just love the idea that the rock is rolling around after them. I mean, just whistles like, okay, time to go, boy, let's go. and the rock's like, oh, okay.
Oh, it brings new meaning to pet rock,
Yes,
right?
pet rocks and Rolling Stones. But so Paul's not necessarily, he's not really saying that. He might be referring to that legend, but it's kind of doubtful. But it is interesting that he is talking about not just the physical food, but he's talking about their spiritual food. And he's talking about what and how they were joined together in the cloud, and they passed through the sea, and they're baptized into Moses in the cloud and the sea.
Right.
So the parting of the Red Sea, he says, that's a baptism.
Right.
It is. In other words, it's the place, not where you get wet, but it is the place where God makes you his people.
Well, and consider that through the Red Sea, they pass from the bondage and the death of Egypt into the promise of the promised land, right?
Yeah.
And so they go in a very real sense from death to life.
Absolutely.
Now, they do have to wander through life for another 40 years before they actually enter the promised land, but
yes.
they are still people of the promise that God has made to them,
Right.
and they continue on in that way.
And that is the baptism, but he says into Moses, which is interesting. So he's kind of leaning back to this old covenant thing.
Yes.
But then he says they all drank the same spiritual drink, for they drank from the spiritual rock that followed them, and the rock was Christ. And when Paul says spiritual, he doesn't mean non-physical. He doesn't mean immaterial. He means that which is of the Holy Spirit.
Right. So with this, it's interesting also that Moses represents the law, and so they are baptized into the law in a sense. They are put under the law,
The covenant,
that
the
God
old covenant.
provides. But the old covenant is fulfilled in the new covenant. So they're people of the new
Yes.
covenant as well as the old covenant. And if this rock is Christ that follows them or leads them in the pillar of fire and the pillar of cloud, then they are baptized not just into Moses through the law, but also into Christ
Yeah.
in this gospel, right? The promise, that is to
exactly.
come.
So the grace of God that we have in Jesus Christ, where Christ abates or takes away God's wrath and anger upon us,
Yes.
even in the midst of our rebellion and disobedience, the grace of God that Christ has for us is operating in this Old Testament miracle as well, isn't it?
Yes.
The people are grumbling, they are being faithless, and yet God is graciously giving of himself.
It's interesting that in the 1 Corinthians 10 passage, Paul starts out his thought with this, but then he does lead us into the gospel in verse 23. All things are lawful, but not all things are helpful. All these things are lawful, but not all things build up. Let no one seek his own good, but the good of his neighbor. And he continues on in this path as we are laid to death and raised to eternal life in Christ. And so once again, we come to this fullness of things. If you eat or drink, whatever you do all to the glory of God. And so that is where we are in all of this, that even though we grumble against God, he calls us to himself. And when we are in Christ, then all that we do can be to the glory of God.
Yeah.
We've got just a few seconds left here, Troy. Any last thoughts?
Well, what I find is fascinating about this miracle is that ultimately, with this miracle, we are once again led to Christ.
Yes.
So I think any miracle that we see should have some aspect of Christ in it and some aspect of his cross in it as well. And we'll see if that kind of bears out in our future studies.
Yeah. I'm just reminded with the rock following the 23rd Psalm, surely your goodness and your mercy will follow me. And it's not just a follow, it's a pursuit, if you look at the Hebrew in that. So we'll leave you with that thought. Until next time, God's peace be with you. We'll see you. For You Radio is a 1517.org production. To listen to this radio broadcast and broadcasts like this one, I invite you to visit 1517.org. There you will also find many publications and free resources, including classes on Christian apologetics, church history, philosophy, and so much more. We are completely funded by generous donors like you. Would you consider making a generous gift to our work of spreading the gospel? Simply visit 1517.org.